All right. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I had my computer shut down on me just before I was going to start. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. So you can hear me well? All right. Sounds good. Okay. So I wanted to be a little more prepared for this live stream than I was for yesterday's. And I made a few documents to help you guys out. There's some common questions that a lot of you had. And so I put them together and I put them in the video notes right below. Oh, shoot. Now my computer's freezing up again. Okay. So in the video notes below, because I can't do a screencast on YouTube, which is really annoying, not like Zoom or like a Google Meet. But if you click on, right now I'm looking at common question number 1. And I will get into taking some of your questions specifically a little bit later. But first, I just want to go through some of the things that I added to the video notes right below. So if you can click on that one right now, and I see, wow, a lot of people being added. We're at like 92, a whole bunch of people. I'm in common question number 1. Do I need a conclusion? I get this question all the time. There was a whole bunch of questions yesterday on the stream from yesterday. So first off, the short answer for a conclusion is no. There are no points awarded specifically for a conclusion. You can just end your essay at your body paragraphs. It's not a big deal if you don't have a conclusion. However, I recommend writing a conclusion. And there's 2 things that you could possibly do in a conclusion that could help you out. The first one is you go back and restate your thesis. And the reason for doing this is at the AP reading, I've been an AP reader now for the last 4 years, 3 years in the DVQ and 1 year on the LEQ. And for the last 4 years, they tell us we cannot give a thesis point for anything in the body paragraphs, but we can give a thesis point for the intro and the conclusion. So if you have the time, write a conclusion and restate your thesis in the conclusion, but do it with more detail. There have been many times in the past as an AP reader, I have given the thesis point for the conclusion because it was more specific, whereas the intro, when they put their thesis in there, it was too vague. It was like social, political, and economic causes or whatever. So that's a big tip right there. If you got the time, do a conclusion and restate your thesis with more specific detail. There's another thing you could do in your conclusion as well, and that is the complexity point. Look, it's hard to say exactly what it is to get the complexity point. Mostly the AP reader is looking for nuance. Did you talk about, let's say it's a CCOT, continuities and changes over time. Did you talk about both continuities and changes? Both of those. Did you relate it to a time period that was either immediately before the time period of the prompt or immediately after that? Don't do like the old, maybe your teacher told you about this. There used to be something called a synthesis point, which nobody really liked, but you could relate something to another time in history. And it never really worked out well. So don't do this. Like if the prompt is almost anything from what it could be from periods 3 through 7, don't try to relate it to 2020 because it's just too far in time. Now, if the prompt is about the Gilded Age and it ends right at the 1900, oh, sure, relate it to the Progressive Era and talk about how, like in the Progressive Era, they try to resolve a lot of the issues from the Gilded Age. Now you're talking complexity. But that's one way to get, and you could do that like in your conclusion. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next thing that I have in the documents there below. There should be a common question number 2. Okay. This is the second most common thing I get. So if you click on that one that's in the video notes right below, it says, what did it say? It should say something about like the sourcing point. Common question number 2. How do I get the sourcing point? On there, this is what I'm looking at right now. It says how to do sourcing using HAP. If you're on the same document with me, you can see me highlighting the document right now. So how to do sourcing using HAP. I have this kind of sentence starter here, an explanation of all the different things you can do. So one thing is historical context. Explain what was going on when the author wrote the document. So when and where was it? What was happening? Is the document a reaction to an event? What's going on with it? Okay. Now, the thing is, where a lot of people miss on the sourcing point is they do not relate it back to their thesis. You have to do that. You can't just put in a little piece of outside information or talk about the intended audience. You have to relate it back to your thesis, and that's not easy to do. So I'm going to give you an example for each one of these. So first, for historical context. So like this, whatever, say the title of the document, the Articles of Confederation, Thomas Paine's Common Sense, whatever, is related to, all right, give me something specific, an event, an act, an issue, whatever that is, and helps prove, okay, this is why you need main points from a thesis statement. What does it help prove in your thesis statement? So this could be like a little sentence thing that you could plop in there, okay? Here's an example. Let's say we have some sort of prompt about the causes of the revolution. You could say something like, the document is about the Boston Tea Party. And you use the 1773 Tea Act as context. Now, that means the Tea Act was not in the document itself. It was just, let's say, a picture of the Boston Tea Party. So then you bring up the 1773 Tea Act as context, and relate it to the Boston Tea Party. And this helps prove your thesis. And let's say one of the things in your thesis was British restrictions, like of trade or whatever it may be. All right. So then you relate it back to that thesis point of British restrictions with that Tea Act. Take a look at the next one, audience. Audience means like the person or group the author wants to reach with their message. I'll be honest with you. I don't like this one. This is my least favorite HAP point because so many students do this thing. I'm just going to jump right to here. So many students do this. And the intended audience was the American people, because they'll do that with a speech from a president or a letter or who knows, whatever else. I think intended audience is not a great one to use because it's just something, it ends up being too vague and you end up not getting the point for it. And it's always kind of hard to bring intended audience back to your thesis point. It's just hard to do that. Next, purpose. I actually really like purpose. I think most of the time you're going to be talking about purpose with your thesis anyways, and with your essay anyways. Like if you're talking about a document, you're probably going to be talking about its main idea and its purpose. So if you want to make a copy of this, just click, I'm acting like this is a screencast right now, but just click File and make a copy, and you got a copy of your own, okay? So in this, you have, okay, what type of document is it? Why was the source written? What was the author trying to accomplish? And I give you a little sentence starter in here. And then right below, you can see an example from, this is actually taken from the most recent practice DVQ. Some of your teachers might have given this one to you a couple of days ago. This was about cultural change from 1914 to 1941. It was an official College Board practice DBQ. So I think this was document 2, if I remember right. So as a political cartoon, it had the purpose of stoking Americans' fear, who in turn demanded the government reduce or shut off immigration. This proves the xenophobia many Americans had at the time. So one of my thesis points would have been xenophobia, which is fear of foreigners, okay, fear of immigrants. And you notice, I got the purpose in right here. It's trying to stoke Americans' fear, who in turn demand the government reduce or shut off immigration. And this is all related back to the political cartoon from that practice DBQ the College Board sent out, okay? All right, so that's purpose. Point of view. So point of view, who is the author? What is their role? I think actually a better question to ask with point of view is, what biases does the author have? what position does the author have in society? Like, for instance, are they an aristocrat? Are they a poor farmer? Are they, an abolitionist? What are they? And that will kind of give you like, okay, how they view the world. That'll give you some insight into them and what type of biases they might have. It's almost better to think about bias than it is just point of view, okay? So I give you a little sentence starter here. And, I always end this with, how does it relate back to the thesis point? Here is something from a hypothetical Gilded Age DBQ with a document that, let's say, is from a farmer who is also a populist, okay? And let's just say the DBQ is something about like challenges to, what were the challenges of the era to like social and political issues, okay? So like, the author is a farmer and populist, so he will benefit if the United States leaves the gold standard. That's a big issue of the Gilded Age. And this helps prove that there were challenges to the political establishment during the era. So, for instance, this would be, like one of your main points from your thesis, although that'd be kind of vague. But there you go. So this right here, this document, if you're looking at it right now, the sourcing document, it's in the video notes. This can help you greatly with trying to figure out how to get the sourcing point. I get that question. That's like one of the most popular questions I get on the comments is how to get that sourcing point. Use this one, study this one, go through it, take a look at those sentence starters, and this can help you out greatly. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to, I think I have a third one on there. Oh, contextualization. Okay. So if you're staying with me right now, flip to the contextualization one, common question number 3. I see there's about 100 people on this document right now, okay? And it's right in the video notes. Okay, this might intimidate some of you. I just want to let you know, I took this from one of my top students of a practice DBQ we did a couple days ago. Now, if you remember in my video about how to guarantee at least a 3, if you watch that video, I said you might want to think about skipping contextualization, which was actually, amongst some of my colleagues, a fairly controversial statement. The reason I said that is because a lot of people try contextualization, but they don't get it. And it's because they're too vague. So I'm going to give you an over-the-top example of contextualization, but I want you to take note of how specific this student is in getting the contextualization point. So this was a practice DBQ I did a couple of days ago with my students. They had 45 minutes. It was timed. So the prompt was, evaluate the extent to which westward expansion had a positive impact on American society in from 1830 to 1890, okay? So I put in red all the contextualization. Again, this is a bit over the top, but this is a good example of what you need to do. And in the blue is the thesis. His thesis is actually a little bit weak, but the red is contextualization. So you can, I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but you can kind of take a look at how this relates to what are the things going on in that time period, and how does it relate back to that prompt of westward expansion. I mean, he talks about the market economy. He talks about the wagon trails, Oregon and Santa Fe. He talks about the first Continental Railroad. Slips in there the Great Awakening. He probably could have kept that out. But anyways, so my note here on the bottom, this is an example of contextualization goes above and beyond. But take note of the specific details. You need specific details in contextualization. Too many times when people attempt contextualization, if I say that too many times, I'm going to totally start to butcher the word. But too many times when people attempt contextualization, it's just way too vague and we don't give you the point. And we take a look at this. Last year, according to the global mean scores, only 30% of students got this. And almost all students attempted it. Like I saw contextualization on almost all of the essays, but so many were just way too vague. So that's why when I go back to my controversial statement in my guaranteeing at least a 3, I said, hey, you might want to think about skipping contextualization for some of those other points like outside evidence and document usage that I personally think are easier to get, okay? Now, if you got the time though, give contextualization a shot. Another one of my students recently on a practice DBQ, She did the whole thing, and then she noticed she had the whole essay, and she noticed she had 5 minutes left. Well, okay, she went back to the intro and started putting some contextualization in. Fantastic. And actually, it was good enough to get a point too. All right. And then the last one I'm going to talk about before I start taking your questions in the chat there is the last, where can I find it? I have an example essay in there. All right, I'll just talk about it in general. Below is an example essay that I have that would be a 7 out of 10. It does not include contextualization. It does not include complexity. And it does not include the third doc usage point. But I show you how to get a 7 out of 10. And this goes all back to my guarantee at least a 3 video that I made a week or two ago. How to get a 7 out of 10 on, I think, the points that are the easiest to get with just outside evidence, 2 of the doc usage and supporting your thesis points, the thesis point, and so check that out. That's in there too. And that all relates back to that one practice DBQ that the College Board sent out, I don't know, last week or so. Okay. Whew. Those are the things I wanted to go through. So I'm going to take a sip here, and then I'm going to look at this chat and just see what type of questions you guys got, okay? There's my water. Okay, so I got a question here from Steph 1100111. How should a thesis be structured? I have a video about how to do a thesis statement. A lot of teachers teach the John Irish thesis formula. I personally don't like it because I think it's too confusing. And that is like the although X, something Y, main points ABC. I don't know. It's confusing. Look, a thesis is this. It's an argument, so a position, and then main points, okay? Now, most of the time, the College Board likes these types of prompts. You've seen them before. Evaluate the extent to which. They're asking you for an adjective. They're asking you for how much did this cause this, or how many changes were there? So put an adjective in there. Put in great. Usually it's, a lot of change or great change. Once in a while, it's okay to go with not much change, but usually when you're using the documents, it's going to show like change or causes or effects in those documents. So you want to go with like a lot. And then you have those main points. Now, this is a strategy that I think is good for struggling writers. Listen closely. If you're a struggling writer, here's a strategy for you. When you get those documents, those first 7-10 minutes, when you're analyzing those documents, find the main point of 2 of those documents that are like the easiest to read and understand. What's the main idea of those 2 documents? And then use that main idea for your thesis statement as your main points. Because guess what? Then you're going to use those documents later on in your essay, and you're going to be talking about those main ideas. So it's going to help prove that essay. And that's the thing about evidence points. You need to make sure they prove your thesis statement. So use the main ideas of documents in your thesis statement. Take a position, say there was a great change, say there were great causes, whatever the type of prompt might be, and then take those main ideas from those documents, because that's what you have to use as evidence anyways. Okay, Eddie Berger has, what do you need for a 4? I would suggest going and taking a look at that example of an essay I have down below. It's on page 2. That my best guess, I'm not sure. My best guess is a 6 or a 7 will equal a 4. That may not be the case, but that's my guess. My teacher says to do a context paragraph. That's not a bad idea too. Some people do a thesis and then a paragraph of context. Technically, you can get contextualization anywhere in the thesis. Technically, you could get it in the conclusion. Most people, like I tell my students, you like to set the scene first before you do the thesis. So what should be an intro paragraph? Contextualization and thesis. They should both be in there. Don't separate your thesis into a second paragraph. However, if you want to do thesis and then context below it, that's fine as well. That works. How bad can I, okay, so Raven, how bad can I do and still pass? I don't know what the cut scores are going to be on. And the other thing is there's going to be several different DVQs. So not all DVQs are created equal. Some might be harder than others. And it's going to be interesting. Like, let's say there's 6 different DVQs that get sent out. What if like 3 of them are really hard and the other 3 are not so hard? And like the 3 really hard ones, the average score is like a 3.5. And the 3 easier ones, the average score is a 4.5. Are they going to have different cut scores for different essays? I don't know. Maybe.
Hi, Daddy.
Oh, Luna, I'm in the middle of a live stream right now.
Can you take me to bed after you finish working?
Yeah, you just want to come and say hi?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's my daughter.
Hi.
Yeah, these are all these people in the chat there. It's going crazy fast right now, but
Why?
I don't know. They just like spam in the chat, I guess.
Oh.
Hey, how old are you?
6.
When did you turn 6?
May 9.
It was like a couple days ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a good birthday?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say? So there's there's over 1,000 people.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's weird. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's weird. How many people love your video?
Well, they're not here for the video. They're here for like just like this lesson about trying to pass a test.
Oh.
Anything else?
Why does it here for chat? Chat.
They just like chatting and asking questions and everything.
Oh.
And I think they like a little brain break from me. Actually, I need a little break too from talking about this stuff. It's good every 20 minutes to take a little break. All right. Anything else?
Oh, you have a good day, everyone.
Aw, there you go. So she wishes you guys have a good day.
Yeah, I want everyone to have a good day like I do. But
Okay.
sometimes I am a little angry and
Why are you angry?
sometimes I'm angry and not nice of family, but it's still a fun trail.
Oh, you're talking about, we went hiking today? Yeah, you're talking about the trail we went on?
Yeah,
Okay.
because
Yeah, we had a good time.
Because I was mad because you have to choose one but Liam.
All right.
Liam.
She wanted to choose which way we went on this trail that we were hiking on today. And like she didn't understand that like we had to go a certain direction to get back to where we started and everything. It was like a big kind of giant loop. But yeah.
But I want to go to a part that's uphill, but for downhill if we go on the other direction.
But at least we saw the turtles.
Yeah. I saw 4 in them straight away before anyone.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. All right. I got to get back to talking about DVQs, okay?
Look at how many people now.
I know it's crazy. So, all right, I'll be upstairs to read you a story in like a half hour. Like
I know.
Okay. All right. I'll see you later.
Bye.
All right.
Wait right here, Daddy.
What?
Oh, wait right here.
All right. We can't say anything though, right?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Anna Kozak says, what do you think the DVQ will be on? Well, that's the video that is at like 70,000 views right now. So go and check that out. And there's like a ton of different responses to, I have 4 or 5 different like main ideas for what it might be on. Possible topics. Look, my number 1 pick was that Lin Manuel Miranda, Hamilton, would come on and give you guys a little bit of a short video of like motivation right before the test starts, and then you get a prompt about Luna. Come on, this throws me off. Okay, then you get a prompt about role of politics. I can't concentrate. All right, Luna. All right. So yeah, I think my number one pick is it's going to be a prompt about the role of government and like political division from the 1780s, basically Articles of Confederation, all the way up to like 1820, like the Monroe era and the era of good feelings. All right, let's take another one. Let's try to refocus here. What do we do if we have time remaining, say 5 to 10 minutes for the submission timer? Okay, so let's say you got 5 to 10 minutes. I think a lot of you won't have this problem, but if you do have 5 to 10 minutes left, like I said, you go back and write the conclusion, try to get the complexity point. Also, just try to upload that thing. I saw that there were issues with AP Human Geography with people being able to upload. I think Trevor Packer, don't quote me on this, he's the head guy of College Board. I think he said something like 8% of kids didn't get a response in for AP Human Geography, and this might freak some of you guys out. But I think it was a significant amount that had trouble trying to upload. I don't want to get all technical about how servers work, but basically when everyone tries to submit at the same time, and for APUSH, it's close to 1 million people taking the test. It's like a funnel, and only so many can get through at a certain point. So if you have time left, I would just try to submit and try to get your submission in and try to be the one in the funnel that gets in. I don't know if there's going to be problems, but I'm a little worried about it because I think APUSH, along with, I don't know, maybe AP Psych, maybe AP ELA, are like the biggest ones with the most amount of people taking the test. So if you got the time left, I would try to get your submission in, just so there's less of a chance of a technical problem. Okay, Hannah Goldwyn. What's the difference between outside evidence and HIP? Great question. Now, if you're doing historical context for a document, a lot of times, students think, oh, I might be getting outside evidence for this too, but you cannot double dip on points. When you're going for a point, the AP reader will only give you a point for like a single piece of evidence. Like let's say you're talking about like the Sherman Antitrust Act as like historical context for like Teddy Roosevelt breaking up some trusts. Okay, let's say you're doing that. You can, he's going to give you context for whatever thing you're associating it with the document. Now, if you pull that Sherman Antitrust out and talk about it by itself and relate it back to your thesis point, then you're going to get evidence. But if you are relating some outside information to a document, that is a HIP or a sourcing point. If you pull it out by itself, then that is outside evidence. Okay, that is the difference, and you can't double dip. Okay. Hold on, I got a message here from one of my students. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's take something else here. Ooh, this is a good one. I didn't think about this at all. So Bubbly T says, how do you think having two graders grade the DBQ is going to affect your score? Actually, I'm really glad two people are going to be grading your DBQ. just being an AP reader for the 4 years, I always felt that there was some variation between how different tables were grading the essays and how some individuals were grading the essays. So I'm really happy that not one, but for the first year ever, 2 people are going to be looking at your essay. I'm really happy about that. I hope it provides a far more accurate score. And I hope it increases like the score that you should deserve. Okay. So I don't know if I don't think it's going to like increase anyone's score, but I think it should allow for more accuracy. Any tips? Okay. Any tips on political cartoons? I missed who sent that one, but, all right. For political cartoons, you got to like, a lot of people get excited when they see a political cartoon. They're like, oh, sweet, great. An image. It's so much better than reading the text. But a lot of people don't interpret a political cartoon correctly. A lot of times political cartoons are sarcastic. A lot of times it's not, you gotta read everything around the political cartoon. A lot of times your focus just goes right to like whatever thing they're picturing right in the middle of it. But you got to look all around the political cartoon. I'll give you an example, a great example. You should know this political cartoon. The famous one of King Andrew I. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look it up on Google right now. Look up King Andrew I. There's a political cartoon of Andrew Jackson, and he's dressed up in king's clothes, okay, as a monarch. Some people look at this and they say, oh, that shows that shows a positive image of Andrew Jackson because they think he should be a king and they think he should have a lot of power. That's not what that shows. It's the opposite of what it shows. If you look around it, look at what he's stepping on. He's stepping on the Constitution and he's tearing it up. He's tearing up the National Bank. Look around the outsides of that political cartoon. And like I said, go and look this up right now so you know what I'm talking about. Outside, it says like, I can't remember the exact words on the outside of it, but it says a whole bunch of things that would tell you this is not a positive portrayal of Andrew Jackson. And in fact, it's not. It would be, you should interpret it as this would be the Whigs, who are the opposition party to Jackson, how they view him. They view him as a tyrant, not as a good king or something, which, so a lot of people like mess something like that up as for political cartoons. Okay, Yasmin C. Please explain how to connect HIP back to the thesis. Check out the example below. I think it's example number 2. This is what I covered earlier in the live stream. Look at those links below. And for people that got here a little bit later, look at the links I provided below. I have examples like within the HAP document. I'll just go back and click there right now. Within that HAP document, I have like examples on the right-hand side that show you how to do this, how to link things back to the thesis, okay? Okay, Raphael, what's the best way to cut down on time it takes to write the DBQ? It takes me around an hour, but I can't seem to cut it down. You got to identify what points are taking you the longest. First off, I would do a hard cutoff time of examining the documents at 10 minutes. This is my personal opinion, but I think a hard cutoff time at 10 minutes. You got to say, look, 10 minutes, this is when I'm going to start to write. And if you don't get through all 5 documents, then so be it. This is why I say in my guarantee at least a 3 video that maybe if you're hurting on time, just do my strategy of identifying the 2 easiest documents and only focusing on those documents and then outside evidence in your essay if you're struggling with time, okay? So if you're right now, when you're practicing, if you're at an hour, where is that extra 15 minutes going to come from? If you're trying to analyze all 5 documents, well, you can probably save 5-10 minutes from just cutting that down to the 2 easiest documents. How far back should I go? So Carol, Rudy, how far back should I go for contextualization? The previous time period. So let's say your prompt is period 3. Let's say it's something about the revolution. Who knows? Causes of the revolution, effects, whatever it may be. Go back to like talking about salutary neglect a few decades prior. just before the French and Indian War. Then talk about the French and Indian War and how that was changes. And then however that leads into it. Don't go too far back though. Like let's say your thing is period 7. Don't go all the way back to period 3 for contextualization. That's way too far back. Go back to like maybe the Civil War, probably the Gilded Age. If like, let's say your prompt starts at 1900, all right, probably go back to like 1865. It's hard to put like a hard date on it, but I would say a few decades. Nothing more than that though. Okay, Kalili B says, please go into the eras. Well, I don't even know where to start with that. Look, I got a whole video that is a review video for periods 3 through 7, which are the only periods that the DBQ might be on. Go and check that out. I can't do a full review of all the periods though. I would be here till midnight, and it's 9 o'clock right now. Casey, how many specific examples should you have for contextualization? It's hard to say. A lot of it is how well do you explain those examples too? I'd say at minimum 2, okay? If you can get more than that though, like 3 or 4, I think you'd be sitting pretty good with 4. Okay, I saw this comment a few times. So Sem Combs, what sends off alarm bells to a grader? I'm not quite sure what you mean by alarm bells. If you're talking about like the whole cheating thing, I have no idea. I've only graded in person normal years. Of course, nobody's ever graded and done something like we're doing this year. So that's hard to say. I will say this though, your teacher is also going to get a copy of your essay, and they know you're writing as well. And so, the alarm bell might more be your teacher noticing something funny with your essay than it would be an AP reader, because the AP reader is just some random person from who knows where. It might more be your teacher being like, wait a minute, I know this student. He doesn't write like this or this well or whatever it may be. Now, remember, this thing is open note. And I didn't see a question about this yet. It was probably in there somewhere. This thing is open note. So you can, Google around. You can use your notes, although I don't think there's a whole lot of time to do that. The one thing you cannot do, though, is you can't ask somebody physically around you. Like, I don't know, let's say your dad is a history teacher. He can't be in the room with you helping you out with the prompt. You can't ask him any type of questions or anything. You can go Google it. Can you go back to let's say my YouTube video for content? I'm not sure. I think that should be okay though. It's open note. So technically you could pop open a textbook, but who's going to really have time for that? I think if you have incredible organizational skills, you might think about setting next to you some incredibly well-organized notebook of periods 3 through 7 with like tabs that you can like flip to sections that when you see that prompt, you might be, oh, flip, that might help. Okay, Maggie Kozar, best way to manage our time. I think you should have a hard cutoff at about 10 minutes of analyzing the documents. I think more than that, you're really cutting in your ability to get as much, to write as much down as you can. Now, this is also dependent on how fast can you type? And how fast can you type where it's going to, make sense on a page too, or handwrite as well. Although I recommend you should probably type this. I know I have at least one student going to handwrite, and they have amazing handwriting. And the reason I'm worried about handwriting is for a couple of reasons. One, how well is that photo going to be that you take of your handwriting? 2, it's going to take longer for that thing to upload. And we've had some uploading problems with some of the previous AP exams. And 3, how easy is it going to be for the AP reader to read whatever photo you uploaded to? So I think typing is the better way to go. All right. How are we supposed to prompt our essays with answers? I'm not sure what you're asking there. What would you recommend doing to prep tomorrow? Mega review? A I'll tell you, with my students, a whole lot of them signed up for a practice DBQ. And if you haven't done a practice DBQ, like your teacher hasn't offered one yet, you should do one on your own. A lot of my students have said that have done a practice DBQ that they really kind of better understood how to manage their time. And some of them have done 2 or 3 practice DBQs already, and they've gotten better at managing their time every single time. If you're really struggling on content, yeah, go do the mega review video that I did. But you should try to put aside some time to do at least one practice DBQ where you are timing yourself, and pick a random DBQ. If you've never had that opportunity before with like your teacher or whatever, okay? I think that's the most valuable thing you can do at this point, is just practice the timing of this. All right. Question, for the author's point of view, how many documents do you need to do that for? Okay, hit point, there's 2 of them. And this is actually, I think, a really easily attainable point. So previously, the rubric that you normally would have done if we've never had this whole situation, the whole COVID-19 situation, you would have been able to only get 1 point for sourcing documents, and you would have had to do it for 3 documents and do it well. Now, you can get 1 point for just sourcing 1 document. You pick purpose or point of view or intended audience or context. You do that well for 1 document and you link it back to your thesis, you got a point. You can do that for a second document and you got 2 points. If you work out how to do that well, I think those are 2 points that are really attainable, okay? Is 2 sentences enough for contextualization? Possibly. They got to be pretty long sentences, and you got to have some pretty specific details in them. What are the most, okay, this is a great question. Sorry, I'm not going to do well on your name. Surabi Singh. What are the most common mistakes you see on DBQs as an AP grader? Things being too vague. That's it. Like, thesis is too vague. The person says social, political, and economic effects, or just anything like that. You're not going to get the thesis point for it. Same thing for context. In the previous era, there was a lot of political corruption, and there was a lot of things that happened. That's not context. You got to be more specific. Check out my examples in the links below. Missing the linking things back to your thesis statement. So you have outside evidence. And you just talk about the outside evidence. Like, let's say the thing is about the New Deal and you talk about the CCC. You spend a couple sentences talking about what that is, but you never link it back to your thesis. You don't get the point for it then. You have to somehow link that back to your thesis. And that's why you need main points in your thesis that are specific. So you got to link that back to it, okay? If you do that, then you get those points. Those are some of the most common mistakes. Not linking things back to the thesis and being too vague in your context or your thesis. Okay, Catherine Reddy. So do you believe that we should do a separate paragraph dedicated to our outside evidence, or should we implement it into the body paragraph? Great question. The problem with implementing it into a body paragraph that you have document usage in is sometimes that gets muddled between your document usage and your outside evidence. And then the AP reader is like, okay, is that historical context or is that outside evidence? You can put it in a body paragraph. You just got to make sure it's clearly separate from a document. That's why I like in my example, if you take a look at my example, it's the last link below, you'll notice that I pull the outside evidence into its own paragraph, completely its own little paragraph. It doesn't need to be a huge paragraph. It could just be 3 sentences. And in my video that I talk about how to support your thesis, I give you an example of a piece of outside evidence right at the end of that video that shows how to do that. I think that's a better way because it shows the reader that, like, hey, this is outside evidence. I am not putting this with a document. You don't need to, but I think the thing you want to do is you want to like pretend like the reader is, you know, like you just want to make it as easy as possible for that reader to see those points. And so pulling it out into its own little mini paragraph will do that. Hey, Sherry got a question. Do you know the translation between the rubric and the AP scores? I don't know. Here is my guess, and this is only my guess, and I might be wrong. If I had a guess, I think this will be the transition to what your overall score will be. I think a 4 or a 5 will be a 3. I think a 6 or a 7 will be a 4. And I think an 8, 9, or 10 will be a 5. I might be wrong, but if I had to guess, that is what I think. And why do I think that? It's because most of the time an average DVQ score, like last year's average, was a 2.5 out of 7. If you correlate that to a 10-point scale, the average would be a 3.5 out of 10. And typically, somewhere around 50% or a little over 50% of students get a 3 or better. So that would equal a 4 or 5. Well, 4 would be like your low point for a 3. You should go for more points than a 4, though. Okay, and a 4 might end up not being a 3. This is just a guess. But my best guess is, again, 4 or 5 would be a 3, 6 or 7 a 4, 8, 9, 10 would be a 5. Might be wrong, though. Jeffrey Zhang, can you show a 10-point essay? I was going to do that. I was going to add on to my example essay, and I just ran out of time. I was frantically trying to put together some resources and everything for this live chat. I'm going to try to do that soon, but we are running short on time, so I'll see what I can do. Okay, so Eric, so I've seen this question a couple of times. How can you support your argument when you're doing at least 4 documents? Well, fit those documents into overall themes. You just got to basically categorize those documents and figure out which ones fit together. And by the way, a nice kind of way to work your way to complexity is to show how some of the documents might play off of each other. Are some of the documents somehow related? Like, for instance, like let's say you have an essay about, let's just take the 1914 and 1941 DBQ practice one that the College Board came out with last week. You know, let's say there's 2 documents that were both about fear of immigrants, anti-immigrants. Okay, we'll put those into the same category. Like you had the political cartoon that was against immigrants. And let's say there was a document that was like the Origins Act of 1924 that limited like immigrants from a lot of countries and completely excluded anyone from Asia. Okay, so those 2 go together. Well, that's a theme, and put those in the same body paragraph then. Okay. Extend. When you only need to get the HIP with 2 documents, what do you do for the other 2 documents for a total of 4? You just use them to prove your thesis. Hipping is an extra step. Every document that you have, you should always be trying to prove your thesis with the document. That's why, like, a little bit of a tip here for a struggling DBQ writer is to use the main idea of a document in your thesis, because then you're going to talk about that document later on. So you don't have to worry about the HIP if you've got it down for 2 docs already, and if it's done well. I don't know the answer to this one. Okay, Maniva Sharma says, can we copy paste from an essay we wrote before? It is still in our own words. I don't know. I don't know. I would have to take a look at that giant document that the College Board sent out about like cheating and things like that. I'm not sure. It's an interesting question, though. I'll give you that. Okay, Cardi Kicks. So you use HIP to explain how that document supports your thesis. Yes, that is the hard part about HIP. It's not that hard talking about the point of view of a document or its intended audience or its purpose. The hard part is then how do you weave that back towards your thesis? Take a look at my examples in there, and also take a look at the essay example that I have at the bottom of the links. Can you please post an explain outline format for the essay? I got a video that is like a checklist that would also be a good outline. Just look up DBQ checklist in my videos and you'll find one that you can make a copy of that. And that would work for an outline as well. It's like a checklist / outline. How do you structure a thematic response? Okay, so the example essay is a thematic one. The practice DBQ is just about cultural changes. That was it. A lot of essays are like that. A lot of prompts are like that, I mean. So go check out that example one I have in there. It's on the bottom of the links. It'll show you how to structure that and do it. How do you connect the documents and HAP back to the thesis? I have, so this is Jordan Hapler. I have some examples, and I know I'm saying this a lot, but like this is why I came prepared. So if you take a look at the HAP document in the video notes, I have sentence starters on the right side of that document that show you how to do that, and some examples too, okay? All right. There's like so many questions on that same exact one. Just check out the HAP. Okay, this is an interesting question. Chelsea, ooh, that's a tough last name. Iwula? Will I pass if I'm not the best test taker, best essay taker? I hope so. This is why I think doing that preparation, doing a practice DBQ beforehand, and also before that test starts, what I think you should do, especially if you got anxiety issues, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there with anxiety issues, is we get down to like a minute or two left. Do some breathing exercises. Slowly breathe through your nose, fill up your lungs with air, breathe throughout your mouth, and just try to clear your mind before you see that prompt. And that will help calm your nerves. It really will. Just that simple breathing exercise will help calm your nerves and will hopefully help you perform at your best for it. Evan Carter, can you do a live stream during the test? I cannot. I believe I saw this somewhere on social media, but that we have to wait 50 minutes after the test is done until we can discuss the test. And hey, I'm excited to see those prompts and what the prompts are that are used, and if my guesses were anywhere near accurate as well. So I will definitely be streaming, I think, an hour or two, maybe 3-4 hours on Friday when it's, when I've gathered those prompts and I've taken a look at them to go through them. But I can't during the test. I'll probably get, I don't know, College Board will probably arrest me or something. Okay, Win Dude. That's a great name. Should you keep documents in the same paragraph or separate them into 2 paragraphs? You can keep documents in the same paragraph. That's fine. Just make sure they fit under the same theme. Try to make sure like your body paragraphs, like a single body paragraph should be supporting a single main point. Don't do this. This is a key point here. Don't do what we call run through the documents, where somebody just goes, in document 2, it says this. In document 3, it says this. And they go through all 5 documents, or in the past, all 7 documents, and all they do is just talk a little bit about the document. They don't relate it back to your thesis. This essay is not just analyze these docs and show the reader that you analyze the docs. It is you have an argument and you're trying to support that argument with evidence. So yes, if you have 2 or 3 documents that fit under one of your main points, put them in the same body paragraph. Do you recommend a 3-pronged thesis? You don't need to. I think a thesis is just, position and main points. 2 main points are fine. You can use the Irish formula. I think it's a little confusing. Just the biggest thing about the thesis is make sure those points are specific enough. If you're too vague, if you say, oh, there's many political changes, social changes, and economic changes, no point. That's never gotten the point. It never will get the point. You got to be more specific. Take the main ideas of the documents and use them as main points of your thesis. Okay, 1 or 2 more questions. I'm running out of voice here. I can't see the point of view part of the hip page. I saw this comment a few times. Why can't people see that? So I'm not sure. The point of view thing is, if you take a look at the HAP sourcing template, it's on there. Yeah, I'm not sure why you're having that problem, because I'm looking at it right now. Okay, Deanna Aguilar, how should we include key terms in our documents? And how should we include key terms? Okay, you just said the same question twice, I think. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to, all right, that's a weird question. You could take key terms out of the documents and then use them in your essay. Oh, here's something I haven't talked about. Don't do this. Don't heavily quote from the documents. And actually, even better, don't quote from the documents at all. You don't get any points for quoting from the documents. What you should be doing is taking the main idea of a document and then using that in your body paragraphs, with parenthetical citation. This is where that main idea came from, and supporting your thesis with that. So yeah, don't worry about like quoting the documents, because that never gets you any points. How big a factor will spelling and grammar be? None. Well, almost. Actually, hold on. Let me take that back. Almost none. If your spelling and grammar is so bad that it confuses the AP reader, where we don't know what you're talking about, then that's not good. But if you just have like spelling and grammar problems, we're like, all right, you're just a bad speller, but we can tell what you're trying to say. It's not a big deal. The AP reader is trying to figure out what you're trying to say, and is trying to figure out where the points are. They're never going to be like, oh, this guy's grammar is terrible, 0. They're never going to do that. They're going to read that as close as possible, give it the best read they can to give it points and find where those points are. All right. Do you recommend putting outside evidence after the sentence to point it out to the grader? I recommend putting outside evidence in its own separate mini paragraph. If you put it right after a sentence that you just used to document, the reader might confuse that with you attempting historical context. I talked about that earlier, though. Can a counter argument be used as a body paragraph? It can. You don't need a counter. I see this question a lot too. You don't need a counter argument. There's no real point for a counter argument. You might get complexity, for a counter argument, depending on how you structure it and what you say, but you don't need a counter argument. I know that's a popular thing in ELA classes. The biggest thing is, look, have an argument and just prove the heck out of it, okay? Can you use the same HAP to earn both points? Yes. You can use purpose twice. You can use point of view twice. You can use intended audience twice. You can use historical context twice. That's fine. You just can't use it in the same one. Like, you can't have like document, like let's say document B, and you use historical context and purpose on that document. You can't do that. You can only get it for one document. But you can, let's say, document B, use point of view, and document C, use point of view as well. You can get it then. Should we count grouping as part of the 10 minutes of reading the documents? Yes. Yes. Anything where you're not writing. And again, the 10-minute thing is just my suggestion. If you're crazy fast and accurate on the keyboard, hey, maybe you can spend a little more than 10 minutes analyzing the documents and thinking about your outside evidence and the context and everything. You need to, assess your own skills at typing or writing and everything in your own pace. Okay, finally, a question that's not like DVQ. Bubbly tea. What's your favorite color? This is like my daughter's favorite question. Well, it used to be, not so much anymore. I'm a big fan of blue, although sometimes green, just like, especially now, I live in Wisconsin and the flowers are starting to bloom. I mean, it takes forever for us to get out of winter. It was even like snowing last weekend, which was horrible because it's May. And so, I love the green that we're starting to see in the trees, starting to sprout some leaves and everything, and the flowers coming up and the grass is green and everything. It just lifts your spirits so much. It was actually nice out today. Wait, so we don't need a counter argument? No, you don't need a counter argument. Like, there's no specific point for a counter argument. Yes, it can possibly be complexity. It depends on how you structure it, but just one thing you should do is go through the rubric on your own. Don't just wait for a teacher to tell you what you need to do. Go through the rubric on your own. You can just find it. Just go AP US History rubric into Google. It'll pop right up, and you can read exactly all the points and everything. There's nothing in there that's like specifically a counter argument. Can you do 2 hips for each document in case one is wrong? Yeah, sure. And I've been at the AP reading where once in a while we'll get an essay like that. Somebody will just crazy attack the documents. They'll do a historical context and they'll do a purpose for a single document, and they'll do that for like 2 or 3 documents. And sometimes the context was too vague. They didn't link it back to the thesis. So yes, you can do more than 1 hip for it. And if one of them is right, and remember, the key thing about hip or HAP is proving your thesis. So you can do that. I missed who that was from. Somebody said, can you take the test for me? Sorry, I cannot do that. You know what though? I think it's great you guys are going, and I hope you guys pass, and I hope you guys do well. And I think it's great you're taking on this huge challenge. I mean, even without it being a 45-minute online DVQ, if it was a normal test, it would have been an over 3-hour test of multiple choice and SAQs and LEQs and DVQs. That's not easy. So, props to you for giving this a go. But to be honest, I don't envy just the stress, the anxiety, and everything that goes into this. However, with that said, if you do pass, the reward can be really big. We all know college is super expensive. I'll just take the main school of my home state, which is UW-Madison, the Badgers. It's somewhere around $25,000 per year. And kids who are loading up on the AP classes and the dual credit, the CAP classes at Appleton East, my high school, a lot of them end up with sophomore standing after they get done with high school. They're literally saving about $25,000. And they can also pick their classes earlier and everything too. So while this is an incredible challenge and it's incredibly stressful, the rewards can be pretty good that come out of it. All right, what did you eat for dinner? Smoked fish, actually. I had some smoked salmon. It was delicious. And then some sticky rice that went with it. And what you can do is with the sticky rice, you take the salmon, the smoked salmon, and it's delicious. You take it and you put it in the sticky rice, and you make like a little sticky rice ball with the salmon in the middle of it. And then you eat that, and it's like the salmon is like salty and smoky and everything. And the sticky rice is sweet, and it's just like sweet and salty and delicious. It's amazing. Kids love it too. Oh yeah, 1 or 2 more, then I got to call our quits. I think Luna's still waiting for me to read her a book. Okay, would showing the main idea of a doc through quoting it get you marks? Please don't quote your docs. You got to put it into your own words. Nobody is earning points for quoting the documents. It's got to be in your own words, okay? Bumblebee pretty much answered his own question. Bumblebee 369. So basically, make a good thesis and group, then attack the docs like crazy. Yeah, and then relate it back to the thesis. Okay, last one. Here we go. Let me find a good one here. Last question. Okay, this is a good question. Willem van Oostrom, what are good types of outside evidence? Big events or specific documents? If you mean specific documents, like ones that are not in the 5 that you get, yeah, sure. Like let's say you have a prompt that's something about the revolution, and for some reason, Thomas Paine's Common Sense was not a document. Well, heck, that's a great document then to use. Another thing that's great to use, and I've used this one as an example earlier, are acts of Congress, really monumental acts of Congress, like the Sherman or Clayton Antitrust Acts, or the Homestead Act, or all those compromises, 1850, 1820, the Fugitive Slave Act, Kansas, Nebraska. All of those are really great pieces of information. Events can be good. It depends on what the prompt is. Like if you take that one prompt that we had, the practice DVQ about cultural changes, you had like a big event with the passing of the women's right to vote, the suffrage amendment. That was like an event, but that's also kind of like a piece of legislation too. So for my money, I think, piece of legislation, those acts and everything are really good. And also, if for some reason they don't bring up specific documents, like something like common sense, and it's in the revolutionary time period, that would be great as well. Okay, guys, I'm actually pretty tired, and I can hear my daughter bouncing on a bed, or I don't know what she's doing up there. I don't know if you can pick it up in the mic, but she's probably still waiting for me to read her a book. So I hope you guys do well on the test. Check out the video I made about like your final preparations, about how to calm your nerves before the test and getting a good night's sleep and everything. And I hope this live stream helped you out as well. But have a great evening, and I'll see you later.